All right, so we've been talking about resolute leadership, and resolute is that purposeful action of, basically taking purposeful action and taking it through a process. So a lot of times when people talk about being resolute, all they think about is, well, I'm strong. The most resolute leader is not always the strongest leader, but a resolute leader is strong in some different ways. So what I want you to understand today or this morning is you need to be resolute. So before we even look at this topic of open to change and growth, you have to understand that you cannot do that if you are not resolute. So you need to be resolute, and the world around you, your family, your friends, the organizations that you'll be a part of, the churches that you'll be a part of, the community that you will live in, need you to be resolute. They need you to have this process. Hey, I'm going to have this process of going through life with purposeful action. And one of those purposeful actions is open to change and growth. And our world is full of change. And I think a lot of times when people hear the word change, they think scary, stupid, I don't want to do it. But I think we've looked at the word change in the wrong way. I think the word change needs to be viewed as an opportunity. Now, does that mean that change is always easy? No. There are some times that change is incredibly hard. It is. It's just not easy to change. It's not easy to grow. But let me give you an example by the way of a story. March 2020, we come off a spring break here. Some of you were students, some of you were not. But we come off of spring break here, March of 2020, and in just a few days, we're headed home. And we're headed home with this new idea of COVID and this idea of what does the world look like now? Oh, we'll be back in 2 weeks. No, that 2-week time came and gone. Oh, we'll be back in a month. That time came and gone. Hey, we'll be back in the fall. And I remember sitting on campus in the middle of May going, there is no way this thing lasts all the way through till getting started. We are going to have maskless. We're going to be here for getting started in August 2020. No, that didn't happen either. So the whole idea, to give you an example of open to change and growth, getting started had to drastically change for fall 2020. As a freshman, Nate, getting started, actually for most of you, getting started used to be in the field house. And actually go back a few years before that, getting started used to be in Alumni Hall. So you would enter the music wing, walk down that tiny little hallway, go into the band room for something, go out of the band room, go into the choir room, and that's where UMS was, and you had to get your shot. And then you had to walk down that little hallway all the way to Alumni Hall to get into the big hallway, and that's where getting started was. That all changed during another transition time at Cedarville in 2013 when Dr. White came. So when things change, there's opportunities for massive growth. So let's go back to fall 2020. Getting started could not be in the field house. You didn't want 1,000 people in the field house walking around in that close quarters. If we really had to stay 6 feet apart, you might have 30 people in the field house. So how are you going to do that? So that's where the idea of this drive-in line came in. That's the idea that we came up with. Well, what if we had a way to text, they give us their name, we check their name off, and it automatically sends a text message to the RA and to their sting leader. Now with that, there came some struggles because there were departments that used to use getting started as hey, we want you in our department, come visit the library. You guys know what the library is, right? It's right over there. Okay, that way. Books. But the study, if you want a place to study, the library is a great place to study. Just to say that. But so these people had a real hard time because you're taking away our opportunity to recruit. So that change happened. The only reason why that change happened is because we were open to it. We looked at COVID as, well, we can't put everybody in the same place. Let's use this opportunity. I've been looking for ways to get out of the field house for years because mom and dad, when they drive on campus, are like, oh, goody, I've got to go park my car and wait in line in a field house with 1,000 other people for 45 minutes. Then I got to get back in my car and go find the residence hall that my student lives in through all this traffic. And I'm like, hey, let's just get rid of getting out of the car until they get to the residence hall. And that happened because of change and growth. I think a lot of times we forget to ask ourselves these two questions. Who wants to change? If I were to ask you this morning, I don't want you to raise your hand, but who wants to change? A lot of you in the room would be like, well, he's talking about change and growth, so I'm going to raise my hand. But if somebody were to ask you that and you were to talk to your friends about who wants to change today, most of you are not chomping at the bit to change. You're just not. But if I were to ask you the question, who wants to grow, most of you in this room would say, oh yeah, I want to grow. I want to get better. Can I challenge you that you can't grow without change? So to be open to change and growth is this. To be open, you have to be willing and ready. You got to prep before you step. That's a Josh Penny phrase that he came up with. But you got to prep before you step. The whole idea, you got to be willing and able to change. You got to be open to it. Now, what is change? In my words, the definition I want to give you, it's just innovation. It's just adapting things. Change is not always like, this is a drastic change. But when you move from one city to another, there's a change. You can either pout about it or you can be open to it. And what is growth? I think growth is that the idea of, hey, I'm looking for this mindset of having what they call now a growth mindset. I'm looking for opportunities. So when you look at that, change causes growth. And growth requires change. So when I went to that second question and I asked you who wants to grow, most of you in this room would raise your hand or you wouldn't be at college. That's why you're here, to grow in your educational experiences, to grow in the ability to think through computers or music or education. That's why you're here. But most of you don't really chomp at the bit to be like, hey, dude, I just really want to change today. Now, is there a danger to change? Yeah, you don't change everything. If you came in every day and go, man, I'm going to change everything about my house. I'm going to change every place of the furniture. I'm going to change everything we do. I'm going to change the menu. I'm going to change our routine. Change can be a harmful thing if it's not done in intentionality. So how do you change? How are you open to change and growth? I want to give you three things. One, I believe there's boundaries. Number two, I think you need a prep. And number three, I think you need a step. So the whole idea that number one, boundaries. There will be non-negotiables in your life and you need to identify those. Your faith should be a non-negotiable. You're not going to wake up one day, get to the office, and then all of a sudden you get put in an immoral situation and you're like, what the heck do I do with this? You have to decide now that your faith in the Word of God is going to drive every decision that you make. Because if you wait to that time, you're not going to be, okay, there's an opportunity right here, but man, I need to get my Bible out. What's the Bible say about embezzling money? You're not going to do that. You're going to go with the flow. Faith is one of them. Family's another. Andy Stanley, who's a pastor and a leader down in the Atlanta area, said this: if you cheat your family, you will always cheat your family and your ministry. If you cheat your ministry, there is a way that you will not cheat your family. What he was trying to challenge to his pastors is cheat the ministry, cheat your work instead of cheating your family. Now, the word cheat here, guys, don't jump off the deep end and go, he told me to cheat and not do my job well. No, I'm telling you what he is saying is your family is the priority. You're not going to wake up one day at the end of your career and go, my goodness, I wish I would have spent 5 more hours at work. But you might wake up one day at the end of your life and go, I wish I would have spent more days with my son or my daughter or my wife or my friends. Those are the non-negotiables. You've got to have those. Because when change comes up, which it will, we live in a world full of change. We're in a political environment right now that changed just on Tuesday. And now it's ramping up for a year from this last Tuesday. The whole idea is you have to be open to that, but you have to have those non-negotiables. You also have to be able to look at things from the perspective of not only the non-negotiables, but are you aware of the surroundings, your surroundings? Meaning this, Are you aware of what's happening around you? Are you aware of the job that God has put you in? So for me, I've had to make some decisions about Campus Christmas in the last couple of weeks. Being aware of the surroundings that I'm in. Like with the Alumni Hall. Last year in Alumni Hall, we put big old truss stands up, Edison bulbs. Looked awesome. This year we can't do that because there's music groups that are coming in. There's outside groups using the chapel. And I had to be aware of that and tell Hannah and Avery and Jake that before they got too far in the process. And all of a sudden we get to Campus Christmas decoration night and I'm like, can't do that. But I've got to be aware of my surroundings. Not only do I have to have the non-negotiables, I've got to be aware of my surroundings. So after I have those two things, I have my non-negotiables. I'm not going to negotiate. So if my wife called in the next few minutes, I'm leaving. I'm going. And some of you have seen that. Some of you have been in meetings with me. When Danielle calls, I'll take the call. Because there are things that I have to do as a parent and as a husband. But also, I'm aware of the surroundings of me. I'm aware of my boss. I'm aware of what John Wood wants. I'm aware of where Cedarville is going. I'm aware of where higher education is going. I'm aware that what's coming down the road with hazing and everything with organizations about initiations and things like that. I'm aware of all that stuff to be careful so that I am willing and able to change. So awareness goes right into the next one. So we've got number one, what are your fences? There's nothing wrong with fences. Fences make the best neighbors because you can put the neighbor on the other side of the fence and go, hey, good, stay at your place, stay at my place. But you need fences in your life. You need boundaries. Number two, you got to do some preparation. So for me with getting started, I had been looking at changing getting started for years. How do I get rid of some of the things that are not the negotiables? How do I get parents from having to park their car twice? How do we get them to have a better experience? I had looked at other schools, so I had read materials. I had watched what other schools had done. I have talked to other schools and what they have done. So if you're going to be able and open to change and growth, you have to be reading. So in nursing, if you're going to be open to change, please don't change all the procedures, but if you're going to be open to change, you need to look at what other hospitals are doing. In education, you need to look at what other teachers are doing. In music, you need to look at what other performers or what other churches. In computers, you need to look at what other people are doing. I think one of the greatest things that I love doing is I love watching great businesses work. I love going to places and going, okay, how do they do customer service when they've got millions of customers that come through? One of the reasons why I'll sit for hours at a Disney resort and just watch people come in and out and watch how they park cars, how they move cars, how they get people to the registration desk, how the registration desk answers phone calls, how do they get people to their rooms. I watch that. I read about that. And every day that I do that, I'm preparing myself for a change that might be necessary in what we're doing. Virtual queues happened because we couldn't wait in line. Virtual queues has been something that a Universal Studios, a Disney World, a SeaWorld, even Kings Island has some of their skip the line things. People have been doing that for years. So we were ready because we had looked at stuff like that, and Jacob Allenson and I, we were able to do that and move some changes that way because we had prepped. You're not going to be able to change if you just sit there and go, well, I'm going to wait for the change, and when the change comes, I'll be ready. Nope. You got to prep for that. You got to be ready for that. And the last one is, I said the step part, but it's more doership. And the idea of doership is you just got to have courage and actually just try. Can I promise you that everything you try will not succeed? Isn't that great? 7:15 in the morning, I told you you were going to be a failure. Okay? But everything that you try will not succeed. But everything that you try, every opportunity that you take is a building block for the next step. A friend of mine sent me a picture the other day when John Wambold and I were at the UD game, and it was a picture of the same guy but two different things. One of them had like all these blocks of failure that were piled up on his shoulder. That's one way of looking at failure. And the other one was a guy building steps with those blocks. And basically every time I fail, I've taken a next step to be able to succeed. That's what it means to be open to change and grow. You're going to fail. There's going to be times that you change something, like for me at Renova the last couple of weeks, not saying that they had to clean out the portafilter with a rag. Then yesterday, what happens? The machine is not working. It's spitting water everywhere. What did I find out? It was a buildup of espresso, and Parker Johnson was right. He's not here, so I feel okay saying that. But the idea of that is there are some times that you'll make a change. Like, I didn't like the rag. I felt like it looked nasty. It was dirty. I didn't like it. I'm like, get rid of it. It doesn't make a difference. Get rid of it. And we got rid of it, and then we had buildup. Okay, I made a mistake. But what's going to come with that change? Well, maybe we'll find a rag that's not as attractive to dirt, and we can hide someplace. But I was wrong, and I had to admit that. But it's okay. I was willing to take the step to make sure that the appearance and the health code of the environment was in a good place. Because when I come down the stairs, I don't want to see a black rag with coffee grounds on it on top of the machine. That doesn't just make warm feelings inside of me going, ooh, coffee. You know, I want to be able to see a clean, shiny machine. That's what I want. So I made that decision on no rag. Machine broke. We fixed it. Now we have to have a rag, but we got to figure out where that rag is going to go. That would not have happened if I wouldn't have first made that decision. But again, if you make a mistake, you make a mistake. So number one, have your boundaries. Know what are your non-negotiables. Because there will be things in life, you will have them, where people will tempt you with things that you cannot go down. Dr. Dixon said when he was the president of Cedarville, he said, it takes a lifetime to build your reputation. It takes a moment to destroy it. And that's what happens when you don't have proper boundaries. Because the world's going to be like, hey, it's okay, try this, try this. Somebody might say, hey, come on, let's do this. You've got to be open to change and growth, but you have to have those boundaries. So number one, have your boundaries, your fences. Number two, prep. And number three, do. Because if you're going to have the process of purposeful action to be resolute, you can't be unbreakable. Resolute does not mean I'm going to stand on this spot until the day that I die. Resolute means I'm going to go everywhere God needs me to be, and I'm going to be the man that he needs me to be, and the man that my family needs me to be. I'm going to serve well in my organization, and I'm going to go hold fast to what I believe is right. As a leader, you will feel like you are alone a lot of times. There are times I make decisions, and I know it ticks people off. I know when I told Hannah and Avery and Jake that they couldn't do what they want to do, I know it wasn't the most thing. And I went home and I'm like, I really hate this. But in order to be resolute and open to change and growth, I've got to see the big picture. And I have to be willing at times to be the bearer of bad news. That's what it means to be resolute. So be willing to be open to change, be willing to grow, and I promise you, you will not be lacking for opportunities, because the world and the organizations are looking for people who want to grow and develop.